the Strength of America podcast.
Welcome to episode 1 of the theSOApodcast. I'm Bob Davis here with Bobby Davis. And if you haven't already gone to our intro about who we are, why we're so important for us, I want you to make sure you go back and check out the intro video. Throughout this, we're going to go over primarily on what our philosophy and why it's so important that our coaches and athletes and parents all understand the basics of conditioning. Conditioning is kind of an easy thing on our end of it. It's easy to get someone in shape. However, to get them in shape for the sport, that's where we've got a lot of problems. And that's where we want to take a look at some of our base philosophy. So when we get the kids in, whether it's with a team-based, a league, or individual in our clinics and camps, one of the first things we want to do is evaluate them. And that's what today's about. Do you really evaluate the athletes when you get them coming in for your team? Whether it's your soccer team or football, doesn't make any difference. If you're that coach for that sport, not only are you there to teach them the sport, but you're there to help get them in shape, keep them safe. You want them to increase performance at the same time. But do we take the time to really evaluate and see where they're at? And one of the big areas we check is mobility. And Bobby, what are some of the things that you take a look at with mobility that's important for these kids?
Big things for mobility right off the bat I see is I'll see a lot of kids that lack the good ankle mobility. So when we talk about one of the simplest things of people when they wonder why kids can't squat very well, why they can't get down in a position to get an athletic stance to then jump up and land. Something as simple as not having enough range of motion at the ankle to actually get down there. It's a big limiter right there. You just can't perform.
Yeah, and that's where so much of that we see, and again, for us, leads back to the injuries. We see a lot of injuries that are really preventable injuries. And no, we can't guarantee anything that everything you follow and you're going to be fine. Things happen. However, we can tell you that if you've got some mobility issues, and for example, that ankle doesn't move the way they need to, they're going to compensate somewhere else. So they get in a position, instead of bending where they need to at the ankle, the hip or the knee starts to change position. As that happens, we're overstressing joints that we don't need to. So that's a big part. And we're going to have a few of these, and what we want you to do, each of them, is make sure you're part of our Instagram page, because throughout the weeks of these coming up, we're going to expand on what these podcast episodes are. Obviously, go to the YouTube page where you can see the video cast of this, but get to the Instagram. We're going to expand on these and show you some of these mobility things for the ankle, the T-spine, the chest, areas that we really see problems are, and where you could see potentially how to help the kids. Another excellent part is flexibility. Is it really important for kids to be flexible? And why? When do you stretch? Flexibility. What are a few things that are key to you?
Simplest things are just checking the hamstrings. Kids that are super tight in hamstrings from sitting in desks all day, or the hip flexors, right there is a big one that they start pulling on their pelvis, getting them in weird knob positions, and things start aching and irritating from there. So flexibility goes along with that mobility, but I mean the flexibility is just they can start pulling on things with how much kids sit nowadays and in school and different things like that. Flexibility is something we throw into our warm-ups along with mobility and stability, and it's something we finish off our workouts with and encourage the kids to do on their own on a daily basis.
And that goes to a good point. We're talking about the flexibility, the mobility of them getting in a position. If they're too tight, they're not going to get there no matter what, and they need to be stretching often to get through that. Now, some of you may have seen this crazy video that was out not too long ago with the gymnastics coaches. Crazy stuff they were doing to this poor girl. They had the coach, athletes, all of them holding her down to get her into splits, thinking more is better. We keep pounding it. That's the way to do it. It's obviously not the way to do it. You saw the backlash and things that are going on there, but not only because somebody's watching, because you're going to hurt the kids. That's not the goal. But when you're checking hamstring or quads, we're not just checking the ratio between the hamstring and the quads. We're checking left to right. Because how many of these players are baseball players that play year-round, are golfers? How many of you that play golf, we rotate over and over? Some of you, like me in my golf game, we get the most for our money out there, so we're swinging a lot. Well, if you're overdeveloping certain muscle groups, my back is stronger on one side, it's less flexible. We're great, the backswing is good, but our follow-through is not quite as bad, or just opposite direction. Kind of find out where the problem is, and let's lead to some fixes for that, solutions. So we'll have some more on that as well. Next thing we've got to do, flexibility and stability, but what we're really looking for is how they land, what they're really moving. So what are some things we look for with that?
A lot of that is simply if they're going to go down an athletic stance, does their posture, they lose posture? Can they get in a decent position even? So that's big things that we look at even before we even worry about getting them in a jump, maybe just a squat hold. Are their knees aligned in a good position, where are their feet at, different things, how they're setting up for mechanics. If they can't squat very well and they go into a jump, you'll see it right away. Those knees, things collapse, they start folding. And if they're doing it before the jump, I guarantee you they're going to do it when they land back on the ground. Okay, gravity's a big thing, and it's going to pull you down, so you got more to worry about then. So.
And that's in the next couple of weeks. We're gonna really isolate that and go after it, because ACL injuries are a big problem. And we said we're seeing over 250,000 athletes a year with knee problems, it's ACL tears, and 70% of them from non-impact. Had an athlete not too long ago, been out of the program for a while, doing some other conditioning. All great, yes, strong and in shape. However, wasn't working the mechanics of how to land and things going on. Tore her ACL. So how you jump and how you land is important. And we'll address it more in detail, but again, how they're landing. If you take a look at basic squats, whether they're doing weights or not, on the court in the field, they get in a position where their hips are going back. Too many times they're squatting and the knees go forward as the first movement. We're not going hips back. Again, this is where our position is. Or as they squat, they've got a knee that rolls inside. Well, if they get into that position this way, and now you have them do a jump test where they jump and land, you can bet if just on a basic squat that knee's rolling, what do you think when you increase their performance, their power, their movement, their strength? So they explode up, that knee's going to roll. But as they land, that's going to knee and buckle now with even greater force. That's when they tear. So we're going to do a specific ACL in the next couple of weeks so you can really see what we're talking about. We're going to break down all of that for you. But we're going to expand more on that again in the Instagram page, so take a look at that. So we've got to have mobility. They've got to be able to have the motion to be able to do what they're doing. But if they're not flexible, they can't get that mobility. So we've got to have those two together. The other part, great, they're mobile, they're able to move where we need them to be. How are they moving? We've got to get them strong. But that position, that jump and that land and where they're going is crucial, because that's what's happening on the field and the court. And once you see these mechanics of how we're doing them in these next couple of weeks, you're going to go back and look at your volleyball team. You're going to look at the basketball team. Look at some of the other ones, how they're jumping. You're going to see how many of them have that knee rolling to the inside, or they're landing, or they run on the outside of the foot and it rolls to the inside. So things like that will give you some real cues. Some of the big part, of course, most of us all do this now. We already do performance testing. So what are some performance testing that we do and we recommend for some of the other teams out there?
Big basics we do are broad jump, vertical jump, both standing in place, a static position before. After that, 10, 20, 40-yard dash test, and 5, 10, 5 or pro agility. That way we hit all our basics of some horizontal and vertical power, some linear sprint and stuff, and then we get some multi-directional, some change of direction work there so we can see how their change of direction is. And really in those performance tests will tell you a lot too. You'll be able to tell and evaluate in that how they move in a broad spectrum of different tests. So,
well, like you've seen in the combine, for example, just because they have a great 40, just because they have a great vertical doesn't mean they're going to be a great athlete out there on the team. However, you've got our average athletes out there, and we're dealing, most of our kids are the 10 to 14, even though we work with high school and college athletes. But our goal of this podcast is really helping this younger age group be safe, learn a good base, get strong, get healthy, learn how to eat, so they get to that high school level. They're already ready to perform and keep things moving up from that point. But if we just test things and don't know what to do with it, that's like we talk about math tests. We do tests and things all the time in school, but how many of us take a look at that testing and do something with it? We get done with our summer camps or different camps that we do throughout the year. What we want to do is not only see what they're at, but we want to see how did we do as coaching. Did we really get what we were after? Leading up to our basketball season and volleyball, what are some of the big things they all want to know? They want to know our vertical jump. That's great. But did we achieve that? What about the reaction, get in a position to be able to react? So I've got a 32-inch vertical jump out there on the field for a 15-year-old girl. Great. That's awesome. But if every time she gets ready to go up the rebound, she gets in position and then she squats down and moves up, who cares? The play's over. So reaction movement, that's what we've got to do. So we also add another 40. We call it an athletic 40. Well, we'll put coaches. I'll have 2 different coaches. The third one actually is at the 40. It's going to be timing and seeing where they're at. The other 2 I'm going to have roughly around the maybe 12 and 23-yard line. All they do is stand along that line and on that go position. One of the 2 coaches at some point are going to step in the line of the athlete running. I want to see how they react. They drop their hips, move, react, get right back in play. Because too many times the athlete are going to run wide, or we don't react, we hit position, and then we're slow to get back in. I want them to see what we're doing, why, and how to make that change. And you can change it. We tell our coaches, is the number one coach, which is around 12, 13-yard line, and the number two coach, if the number one coach doesn't step out, that means the number two coach is going to do it. The one coach is the one that's designating and setting it up. They may do 2 or 3 in a row at that point, but don't get them in a pattern. We want them to see what they're doing and why. So as we get more in the performance thing, and Bobby will have more of these drills we're going to show to you, but what, for example, with some of the testing things that we do, can we really do and expand more on for the athletes? Is there something in our 40 that's more important? Do all of them need to do the 40? Looking at the sport. So
I'll tell you a little bit of what I do and why. And I started to get in the idea of, well, maybe I should only do certain tests for certain sports. And sure, that's a good option if you have one sport athletes. But a lot of times we get athletes that are multi-sport. You know, it's something we encourage, and at the prep schools where we are at in charter schools, they are all multi-sport athletes. So I went back to the foundation of just testing athletes on every single thing. So our 10, 20, 40, pro agility, broad jump and vertical. That way we could assess from our big summer camp times throughout the whole year, you know, hey, how are these kids doing? Maybe we didn't spend as much time in cross country on our change of direction work, but did we at least do enough work to maintain that way when they finished cross country and went to soccer, that they were at least prepared for it and they were ready to roll?
the bottom line is just be consistent with whatever you're going to do. If you've got 3 different people doing timings, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to have different ones. Now, that one person that does the testing may not be perfect. However, they're going to be consistent, and that's all we need. Are they improving or not? That's like having 3 different scales, and the kids are going to weigh in on different ones all the time. How many of you get the same measurement on each scale? Some of us look for the best numbers on it, but pick one, stick with it, and go all the way through that season with it. And we'll learn, and we'll show different drills and testing processes. But I think a big part you want to take a look at is, if you're that soccer coach, you don't have to always do the pro agility or the L drill. Find something you want to do, but be consistent on the yardage. Don't just kind of step out a few and we'll go here. If it's 5 yards, it's 5 yards. If it's 10, it's 10. Or whatever it is, but stay that way. Make up your drills as you go along, but keep it as a standard so you know. It's like we'll get into weight room testings and different things and why we do what we do, but we want feedback from you. So above all, on this first one kind of coming out to you, if you haven't gone back to the intro, make sure you go back and check that out so you learn a little bit more about what we're doing and why. Make sure you're part of our Instagram page. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. I appreciate you sharing it and getting that out. Go to the iTunes, get that up, mark down whether you like it, what you think about it, what's going on. That helps us get to more families out there. Because a big part for us, like I said, is just expanding the Strength of America family. We appreciate you being a part of it. But let's go beyond that. You know, I've been doing this over 30 years now, from my time at Nebraska, here with Strength of America, and the time with Bobby, growing and getting involved. We've done a lot of great things, helped a lot, but I've also missed an entire generation of kids that never heard of us, that never got the information. A lot of youth coaches now that are doing great things. They want to be there, they want to help, but at the same time, we've got to give them the tools so they have that information to go. So like it, share it, get a part, be a part of our Instagram page, all that, just link the buttons down below. But make sure also your league gets involved, subscribes, and gets there, because we're going to be picking out over the next couple of months 10 different leagues here in the Arizona, the Valley here, in the Phoenix area. And we're going to do free clinics for your teams and your leagues, just based on how many of you from your league actually are on there. So we'll give you more information as we lead up to that as well. But look for our Facebook page, be a part. Thanks again for being a part of the family, and let us know what else we can do to help.